What's up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to Philly on PHLY. It's always brought to you by Bet Parks and Central City Toyota. We're live on a Tuesday morning as we are less than a week from Eagles free agency and NFL free agency. Shout out to everybody watching live this morning on YouTube, like K-Red, that always gives us the morning K-Red. Does a forward hat work on the air? I'm a backwards hat. I love when Bryce Harper came to town and he started wearing the snapback backwards, because this has always been my style even when I was in high school. And then the snap, it kind of went out of style, right? Everybody had the fitted hat. So now it's back, and people used to be like, how old are you wearing your hat backwards? Well, yeah, I do wear my hat backwards. In fact, people in the chat always comment when I have a hat on backwards. So yeah, so does Bryce Harper. What do you think of that? But does it work? Does it work here like this? I don't know. Tyler, what do you think? Does it work forward with the camera?
You see me. I wear this same hat pretty much every day.
Yeah.
So, I'm probably the wrong person to ask.
Well, I'm just saying. All right, so I'll probably mess with it because I'm uncomfortable with. Anyway, we are live on a Tuesday morning. I got a lot to say today. Brandon Lee Gowton of Bleeding Green Nation is going to join us 20 minutes or so from now as Eagles free agency and Darius Slay gets released yesterday. He didn't get released, but word came out that he was going to get cut. It would be a post June 1st cut so they can split up the dead cap. They would actually get money in return on the cap, so it would give them some additional cap space. Not that I'm worried about that. We talked about this a lot on the show, and I was very much, because when we would talk about the big four, is Milton Williams coming back? Is Bond coming back? Is Josh Sweat coming back? Is Mekhi Becton coming back? Right? I would always bring up Slay because to me, it was going to be, is Slay coming back as well? And you're talking about a Pro Bowl type player, probably not playing at a Pro Bowl level now, but damn close, right? Like Slay, especially with a younger, more athletic corner that he can pair with. Slay was excellent this year. And I know that he has some injury history. He had a concussion this year, and it seems like he leaves almost every game that he plays, but he normally comes back in. I thought Slay was excellent this year. And I get it. He's 34. He's playing the corner position. At some point, there's that cliff, and he's going to fall off of it. But I don't think it's going to be next year. I don't think you're going to see a James Bradbury type fall off. If you were to add him to a team and say, hey, we have Darius Slay, he's our number one corner, and your second corner isn't very good, and you don't have safeties, I don't think Darius Slay is going to look very good on your team. But on this Eagles team, a veteran presence, a guy that still can play, to me, I would have tried to work to bring Darius Slay back. Now, we know this is a money game that, if Slay's asking for too much money and the Eagles aren't willing to give that kind of money, something tells me that there obviously were talks that were happening between the Eagles and his reps. But D Gun puts out last night on Twitter, says, according to what I'm being told, don't completely rule out Slay returning to the Eagles. Right now, his asking price is a little steep, but the Eagles are hoping he plays his final NFL season in 2025 in Eagles green. To me, that sounds like it's coming from the Eagles. Like sometimes it coming from the player, coming from the agent. D Gun, even though he's not on the daily beat anymore, when he puts something out there, it's not BS. Unlike some other national reporters, and we'll talk about them coming up in a second. But D Gun, he puts that out there. I believe there's common ground for Darius Slay to come back. It makes too much sense. Your window's open. Is your team better with Darius Slay or without Darius Slay? All right, Slay's not back. Now what are you doing? Okay, Cooper DeJean, he can play. He can be your number two corner. Is that really where you want him right now? And then who's your slot corner? Or who's your outside corner when you move DeJean into the slot when like you're playing a lot of base nickel defense to get into the weeds here? You're going to play three corners on the field a lot, right? So does that mean it's Isaiah Rodgers? You're going to have to pay him. Is it Keely Ringo? Is he really good enough? So you get what I'm saying. For another year at a reasonable price, all day, I want Darius Slay back. So hopefully they can come together and they can figure something out. Now, there is precedent for this. If you remember Fletcher Cox, they did the same thing with him a couple years ago. And they ended up coming back later on that, it was a decent amount of money. It was double-digit money. I forget it was 10, 11, or $12 million. But he came back and actually had a really, really good season. So it's there that the Eagles could cut him and still bring him back. And honestly, weren't they going to trade Slay 2 years ago? Didn't they they didn't officially announce it, Tyler, but I think they came out, everybody reported yeah, Slay's going to be traded or released. And then Slay ended up coming back and they won a Super Bowl 2 years later. So I'm not saying that Slay is gone just yet. You're gonna have to pay money to replace him. So if you're talking about he makes $8 million or something this year, and you're able to spread that over the course of 2 or 3 years, like how he normally does, absolutely, man. So I hope Slay is back because you're a better team with Slay than without Slay. Now, could they be worried about that money in pursuit of Myles Garrett? So here's where I am right now with the Eagles and Myles Garrett. I absolutely think that they will be in on Myles Garrett. Ultimately, I think the price to acquire him is going to be too much. I'm not talking about the salary because he's going to want a new contract. Excuse me. He's going to get a new contract. And it's probably going to be $35 million a year. 34 is the number that's out there right now. So the next guy that gets a contract, the Myles, maybe he gets more than $35 million a year. So are the Eagles going to pay him that money and give up this? The price is really what it's about. 2 first-round draft picks plus a second and maybe another draft pick, and then they get like a 5th-round draft pick in return. Do they have to give up a player as a part of it? You're not going to give up one of your good players to get Myles Garrett, I wouldn't think, right? So I think that there's a possibility. Ultimately, I would predict that they're not going to get it done because the cost. And there's going to be teams that are interested in Myles Garrett. He's a generational pass rusher. He's a generational player. He's a future Hall of Famer. And the Eagles got Saquon Barkley last year. A lot of people will point to. Yeah, they also it was a $27 million contract, and they didn't give up anything for it. So to try to connect the dots and be like, well, Howie got Saquon Barkley last year. Yeah, we could have had Gabe Davis for the same money, the crappy wide receiver that went to the Jags. So it was actually a smart move by Howie. It wasn't this financial commitment. It wasn't giving up multiple first-round draft picks to Saquon Barkley. They didn't give up anything for him, except a very reasonable contract when you look at the end result, which leads me to the Athletics' Diana Rossini. And this portion of the program brought to you by Glatt Hair Restoration. GlattHairMM.com, G-L-A-T, hairmm.com, 610-980-4000. You can see my before and after pictures. We'll show them a little bit later on the program. So I'm sure Diana Rossini is fine, right? Like a lot of these other NFL insiders, Rap Sheet, Schefter, they're not really reporters. They're just regurgitators, sometimes stating the obvious, sometimes being used as a pawn in the game of the NFL by agents, by organizations, by players, whatever it is, right? They're putting out information. I think Schefter, 95% of the time, is just copying and pasting on his iPhone and tweeting it out, right? Diana Rossini, who has been in my ire for a long time now. So she came out late last week, and then she followed up with it yesterday, or I believe it was yesterday in print. But she says that the Eagles have real interest in Myles Garrett, but if they were to bring him in, it would be at the team that the team's top free agents won't be brought back. So, yeah, we could get Myles Garrett, Eagles could get Myles Garrett, but that means that they wouldn't bring back free agents, which they're already probably not going to, independent of Myles Garrett. And listen, Diana Rossini, her husband her husband is a big Eagles fan, is from the area. So I'm trying not to I'm gonna end up doing it, but I'm trying not to kill her here. So here is Diana Rossini, and she has this podcast. And if I was going to start a podcast, Tyler Zulli, at a digital podcast, she's an NFL insider, so you get somebody else on there. Definitely number one on my list would be Chase Daniel, because his insights are unbelievable. I mean, he's great. He really is. On that show that he's on Fox Sports 1, FS1, man, he's dynamite with his analysis.
John, he just says stuff. That's what what it comes down. He just says stuff. Like, I'm not sure how much of it he believes. I'm not sure how much of it is actual substance. Like, I'm genuinely not sure where Chase Daniel falls on the, am I a hot take guy? Am I a calculated guy? I think at some point he tried to be the calculated guy, and now at this point, he's just saying stuff.
He's just saying stuff.
And so I like this year really kind of spoiled me on him. Not that I loved him to begin with.
It was terrible, Tyler.
But like you can clearly tell he still has some vitriol towards the Eagles for the way that he was handled about the Carson Wentz situation. Like there's still some hatred towards the Eagles organization for the fact that they brought him in and said, hey, we're going to give you a chance to be the starter, and then said, nah, actually Carson Wentz is going to start from day one, which, by the way, was the right decision.
Right.
Because Carson Wentz was the far better quarterback. Even in 2016, when Carson Wentz was still figuring himself out as an NFL quarterback, he was better than Chase Daniel. So I think that there's still a little bit of like, I don't like this organization in Chase Daniel, and it bleeds through when he does kind of stuff.
No, you're right. It does. It does. Yeah, he's not an Eagle. He never felt like an Eagle. He doesn't consider himself an Eagle. We'll do this with Black Gritty tomorrow because I think this is something good for us to do tomorrow. He might be the worst analyst out there. That whatever garbage show he's on, and of all those garbage shows, he makes the least sense of anybody. He really does. He doesn't make any sense at all. He's worse than Chris Sims at this point. Chris Sims has come up for air on everything. All right, so anyway, here's Diana Rossini on this stupid freaking podcast with Chase. Yeah, Chase Daniel just grunts and moans now, I think, on this thing. Here's Diana Rossini stating the obvious, not really saying anything. Here she is.
Here's what some people are saying right now, that Howie's willing to move on from some of these guys because he's looking to make a big swing, and that big swing would be for Myles Garrett. Some of these guys that you think are a sure thing may not be sure things to return to.
Pause it. Some of these things that you consider to be a sure thing maybe aren't sure things. So what she's going to do is she's going to list the Eagles players that we already think are going to leave, independent of Myles Garrett. All right, go ahead, Diana. Let's hear more of your crap.
Sure things to return to Philly.
I would rather have Myles Garrett than Zach Bond.
Put it past Howie Roseman going after Myles Garrett.
Absolutely
no way.
Not.
Continue to build and build and build in the area that got them to the Super Bowl and in the Super Bowl's past, which is just to continue with it.
Myles Garrett.
Could you imagine that?
Oh, could you imagine that? So here's Rossini. How would the Eagles come up with room to fit Garrett? By letting some key members of their Super Bowl winning group walk. Linebacker Zach Bond was a free agent gem Howie Roseman found last offseason, but now he's poised to cash in. Edge rusher Josh Sweat, defensive tackle Milton Williams, and guard Mekhi Becton headline Phillies free agent class, and bringing all or even some of them back could prove challenging, especially if Garrett enters the pictures. And you can be certain Roseman will have Philly in the conversation for Garrett. So what she's saying is that the Eagles aren't going to bring these players back because they have interest in Myles Garrett, which is the biggest load of crap of anything that she said in a really long time. The Eagles probably aren't bringing Milton Williams and Josh Sweat back, regardless and independent of Myles Garrett. Now, I think there's a real chance that Myles Garrett, or I think there's a chance that Myles Garrett's an Eagle. I think the best bet with Myles Garrett is that he gets traded. Because once he's made up his mind that he wants to be traded and he's not going to sign a new contract with the Browns, if that's true, the Browns are going to have to trade him. You name me the player that the team says, no, F you, you're coming back, that's it. And that's worked out for both sides. Doesn't happen. When a player of the caliber of Myles Garrett decides that he wants out, generally he gets out. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to give him away and there's going to be contract negotiations and everything. But there's going to be a big market for Myles Garrett. And the Eagles are probably going to be one of the teams that are sniffing around for him, right? That's going to take time. That's not going to happen next week. The Eagles are making a decision right now on whether Milton Williams and Josh Sweat come back, right? Or they've already made up their mind that they're probably not coming back, or who knows, right? That's independent of Myles Garrett. You can't make a free agent decision with Milton Williams and with Josh Sweat and with Zach Bond and with Mekhi Becton because of what could potentially happen with Myles Garrett. There's going to be a bidding war for Myles Garrett. There's going to be a lot of posturing. There's going to be a lot of leverage using by the Browns if they end up trading him. Just because you want to go to Philly, Myles, doesn't mean that we're going to give Philly to you. We're going to need another second-round draft pick to make it happen. This is going to take time and is likely to lead up to the draft. You don't make decisions right now based on what's going to be months away. It's idiotic and it's ridiculous. She's saying this stuff because it's fairly obvious that the Eagles will be on Myles Garrett. It has nothing to do with the players. It has nothing to do with Milton Williams or Josh Sweat or anything like that. So She says it because now all the aggregators and all the people that look for content to write, all the Eagles writers, all the NFL writers, Diana Rossini is reporting that the Eagles have real interest in Myles Garrett, and they're not going to re-sign their guys because they're going after Myles Garrett. And it's literally the biggest bunch of shh that's out there. And she's full of shh. She is. Like, I want to curse so bad, and we're not allowed to do it.
So, personally speaking, I don't believe the Eagles end up making the type of play for Myles Garrett that it's going to require to acquire that type of player. I just think there's other teams with that will offer more than what Howie Roseman ends up offering. I do think the interest is very real, and why wouldn't it be, right? To me, top 3 defensive player in the NFL, maybe has claim to being the best defensive player in the NFL. Of course, interest should be real. I just personally don't think it ends up going across the finish line. But regardless of if the Eagles acquire Myles Garrett or not, I think that's independence, the exact right word to use when you're talking about Myles Garrett's situation, the rest of the free agents. This may not occur until closer to the draft. The draft is another month and a half away. Free agency starts next week. There's no way that the Eagles are going to be able to sit around and say, well, maybe we get Myles Garrett and allow the rest of the guys that they are targeting, whether it be Bond or Milton Williams or Sweat or Becton or somebody outside of the organization to go sign elsewhere. Because then the fool's endeavor that would end up happening would be they don't sign the guys because they're trying to get Myles Garrett and then don't get Myles Garrett.
Or they're pot committed and they have to overpay.
Correct.
Which is the last place you want to be, and Howie Roseman's not going to do that.
Yeah.
Howie Roseman's not doing that, Tyler. I mean, he's just not. This is insulting that she puts this out there as an NFL insider. Here's what I want to know from these two clowns. And honestly, I didn't watch it, so maybe this is unfair, but I can be unfair and apologize later, okay? What's it going to cost? What other teams are interested? What are we talking about here? Okay, so instead of stating the obvious, which is Howie Roseman will be interested in, oh my God, could you imagine Jalen Carter and Myles Garrett? Like, oh, if you're Chase Daniel. Hey, here's what I'm hearing. I talked to one GM that says the Eagles are very much interested in it, Chase Daniel. But part of the problem is, what is it going to cost? Because there's going to be interest from across the league. So I would start the price if I'm Andrew Berry, and he doesn't have to trade him, the Cleveland GM, and he doesn't have to trade him, but I would think the starting price is 2 first-round draft picks plus. And if there's other teams that are now involved, let's say the Commanders get involved, that drives the price up. Is Howie Roseman willing to overpay in a trade and then give him a new contract for a team that just won the Super Bowl and the strength of their team is on the defensive line? Right? Like, that's the type of analysis that you want to hear from somebody that isn't just blurting out talking points so it can go out on a podcast and all these aggregators pick it up. And so it's crap. And I'm sure that show, whatever that show is crap. Right? Like, that's real analysis. And I'm some loser that's in Philadelphia, and I can offer better analysis than that. Sorry, Diana.
Listen, I think the Browns are going to do what they can to facilitate a trade to help Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett has been an excellent player for them. He didn't hold out. Now, he has said he's not going to sign a contract extension, and quite frankly, I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to play there either. But he's been a pretty good he's not held out. He's not asked, he's not tried to like hold the Browns hostage in these type of situations. They're going to do what they can to help the guy out, but they're not just going to say, here, man, take whatever. You could have Myles Garrett.
Whatever you want. Oh, yeah, first is fine.
Right.
Yeah.
They're still going to try to get the best value that they possibly can. So they're going to go to Myles Garrett and say, listen, we understand you want to play for a winning team. We're going to try to facilitate that. But if the Jets or the Jags come in and say, hey, we'll give you 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and X defensive player back, we're going to take that trade because it's in our franchise's best interest.
And then Myles Garrett's going to say, I'm not playing for those teams. So then they go back to the Eagles and
Correct.
say, listen, I need more. Right? Remember what Howie did with Carson Wentz? It was a masterclass of negotiation. Carson Wentz said, I'm only playing for the Colts. That's the only team you'll trade me to. The Bears were interested. And they said, I'm not paying for the Bears. So what did Howie Roseman do? All right, you don't get him. Like, that's fine. Like, he ended up getting a first freaking round draft pick for Carson Wentz for a guy that was busted, and he said he would go to one place. You know why? Because the Colts wanted the player. Is Howie Roseman willing? And we had INS up there that said, who said he's going to overpay? Well, it's not a lock he's going to overpay, but the more teams that are interested, the more they're going to have to give up. Because Andrew Berry at this point, the GM of the Browns, like Tyler was saying, his only job is if he's trading Myles Garrett. By the way, he's trading a future Hall of Famer that was the first overall pick. He can't get undervalued. He's got to get premium value. He's got to get 2 first-round draft picks. Is Howie willing to me, it would be an overpay based on where the Eagles are right now. It'd be an overpay to give up 2 first-round draft picks plus. You can get them for a first and a second and a player. Okay. He lives with knowing value, Howie Roseman, and he's so good at it.
I do want to ask you this one thing, though, John, with the overpay conversation, knowing that it probably includes 32 this year, also with the understanding that the Eagles there's a chance they trade out of the first round. I could certainly see that being the case. Maybe they don't want to pay first round money.
Right.
Maybe they want to get a couple more picks, a 2 and a 2 next year, and some other stuff. That whatever their thought process is, there's a chance they trade out of the first round. So if you're looking at 32, you're going to get a good player at 32, but you're talking about 32 this year, and I don't know, 28, 29, 30 next year. The Eagles are going to be good again next year, we think.
It's
so
a great
it's going to
point.
be late in the first round.
Doesn't have the same value as a team that could be picking in the middle.
Does that have the value to the Browns that they would value? Like, is Myles Garrett versus, like, let's say Walter Nolan plus a receiver at 32? Where does that balance out?
The second round draft picks at the end of the second round, right? So and it's going to be like that next year too. Right, like the Eagles aren't gonna suck unless something major happens, like injuries and things like that. All right, Brandon Lee Gowton, Bleeding Green Nation, is coming up next. We'll start with this discussion right here, and then Slay replacement, free agency, how he sees everything working out. BLG, Brandon Lee Gowton, Bleeding Green Nation, next. Philly, John Marks. Why would you go anywhere? All right, I got to make the switch to the backwards hat to talk about Rothman. That's right. So listen, if you're in pain, right? My prediction, pain. Well, if you're in pain, you don't have to suffer with pain. You don't. If you're living with like, my back's always bothering me, or anytime I run, my knee, my hand when I garden, whatever it is, right? Rothman's got you. Rothman Orthopedics, specializing in you for over 50 years. We're talking about high quality, compassionate, and affordable care. And listen, they're all over Pennsylvania and New Jersey, over 30 plus locations. And these are urgent cares, walk-in centers, physical therapy, 30 plus convenient offices. I went up to Limerick. I did my PT, my physical therapy for my shoulder in Limerick right there. I've been to the urgent care. Like whatever is going on with you, whether maybe it's a serious injury, maybe it's like ankle replacement, hip replacement, knee replacement, broken bones, x-rays, bracing, MRIs, physical therapy, and more. Year after year, Rothman outperforms everybody and performs among the highest volume of all these particular things. Rothman, new patients and consults. Get on rothmanortho.com/PHLY. I suffered with my shoulder for literally, it might have been 2 years, but it was a year. I'm like, it'll get better. I tried some exercises that I saw online. One appointment with a Rothman doc, 6 weeks of physical therapy, no MRI, no cortisone shot. Bam! I've been good ever since. Rothman Orthopedics. Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and to make an appointment today. All right, there you go. Central City Toyota. Oh, Nelly. Yep. So I was up there last Wednesday seeing Uncle Jamie at Central City Toyota. And I take a cruise. You know, I'm in there doing some work. They have the business center where you can plug in, drinking some coffee as if I need any more coffee. Plugged in. I took a little cruise around the showroom, a couple of new Toyotas. I love the Camry. I do. I love it. It almost looks like a Mercedes. Love the new design of the Camry. So if you're looking for a new ride, CentralCityToyota.com. All their inventory, they have certified Toyotas. They have new Toyotas. All the inventory from their sister dealership, Ardmore Toyota. CentralCityToyota.com. And also sales and service, right? So they're the biggest service department in the whole city of Philadelphia, the entire city of Philadelphia, parts and service, #1 in the city. So if you need your car serviced, you want to drop it off at the dealership, take the shuttle into the city, bam. You want to wait at the dealership like I do, bam. Check this out. Appointment only basis, centralcitytoyota.com. You can drop your car off, or just drive to work, right? They'll come and grab your car, take it back at its service, and drop it back off. centralcitytoyota.com. Uncle Jamie is my uncle, and he's the general manager of Central City Toyota. So you just walk right in there on Chestnut Street in the heart of University City and say, hey, where's Uncle Jamie? Johnny Mark sent me. centralcitytoyota.com. Check it out. There you go. centralcitytoyota.com. All right, I'm going to leave my hat on backwards because I should roll my sleeves up too. There's a lot to get to with the Eagles. Free agency or the tampering period, less than a week away. A lot of big decisions need to be made by the team. Myles Garrett is on the table. Darius Slay looks like he's going to be getting cut. Could they re-sign him? To talk about all these things is Brandon Lee Gowton from Bleeding Green Nation, and he joins us right now. What's up, BLG?
How's it going, Johnny Marks?
Excellent, brother. So what's the post Super Bowl / parade? What's it like for you? Because if you're covering the team, you don't get a lot of rest time because free agency rumors start right away. But do you take a week off and kind of get off the radar for a little bit and then jump back on, or what did you do post parade?
Yeah, it really felt like that 1 week there after the parade, that Friday, where it was kind of a little bit of nothing and then really just got right back into it with the combine and everything. So no rest for the wicked. Certainly a kind of good problem to have. But yeah, it's kind of funny how it's already just here.
It's crazy, and we like when your team doesn't win, you're really obsessed with the free agency and the draft. Now, free agency is a totally different animal this year with the Eagles. So let me talk about Myles Garrett first, and then we'll talk about slaying some free agents. So Diana Rossini, noted NFL insider, comes out and says, "Oh, the Eagles might not re-sign Josh Sweat and Milton Williams because they have real interest in Myles Garrett." Wouldn't that be independent of anything that the Eagles are doing at the beginning of free agency? I mean, it's almost insulting for her to come out and say that. I know why she says it, but like the Eagles have to already have a plan if they're bringing Milton Williams or Josh Sweat or how far they're willing to go with it. You can't say we want Myles Garrett, which is likely to happen around the draft, so we're not going to re-sign our guys because we hope we get Myles Garrett. Does that make any sense to you?
You said hope there, and Howie Roseman has said verbatim in the past that hope is not a strategy. And I feel the same way when it comes to you can't just like not re-sign people with the hope of being able to land Myles Garrett down the road. Especially like I just think the way that, and obviously I respect her reporting. I don't doubt what she's hearing, but a matter of like I don't think it seems like a false choice the way it was presented. One of the last things she said in terms of like Zach Bond or Myles Garrett, or like any free agent the Eagles have, or Myles Garrett. And I don't really think that's the dynamic. Obviously, they can't literally keep everyone. So, yeah, there are going to be some people who walk, but that's independent. I think even if Myles Garrett isn't in the picture, I still think some of those guys you mentioned just aren't going to be back because they're going to get a way higher price in free agency than the Eagles are going to be willing to pay.
Right. Yeah, like Bond should be back whether or not they think or they're going to make a run at Myles Garrett or not. If you decide Bond is your priority, then Bond's your priority. Do you maybe look at Becton a little bit differently and say, hey, we'd rather have some flexibility because we are going to go after Myles Garrett? I mean, maybe that makes a little bit more sense. But this idea, listen, she said this and wrote this. She said that, like, how would they fit Garrett in? Well, by letting some key members of their Super Bowl winning group walk, and then she mentions all the free agents. I don't think Josh Sweat's going to be back. And this is like I used the word independent. Tyler used the word independent. You used the word independent. I don't think Milton Williams is going to be back because he's going to make $20+ million a year. I don't think Josh Sweat's going to be back because he's going to make close to $20 million a year. It doesn't mean that you can't still get Myles Garrett. And one more thing here, as I'm just rambling on when you're here, BLG. I see a lot of how would they fit Myles Garrett in? That's how they fit everybody in. They don't need the cap space this year. What don't people understand about the way that Howie designs these contracts? Jeffrey Lurie pays all the money up front, so Howie can come up with these bogus contracts to spread all the cap hits out, and then they just redo the contracts with roster bonuses to keep doing it. If owners would pay everything up front, any team could do this. But Jerry Jones is cheap. Mike Brown is cheap. They want that money to accrue interest in the bank. They want to keep it. Jeffrey Lurie puts all the money out there. If they want to fit Myles Garrett in, they could sign anybody they wanted to. It's just so stupid. Oh, my God. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think like they're not going to be like, oh no, like we have the terms worked out on Myles Garrett trade and everything, and like the money is the hang up. No, like you'll make that part work. They can figure out that part. There's other bigger obstacles to jump through before getting to that point. But yeah, I mean, obviously, it's not that the cap is fake. I don't agree with that, but it's just like it's not that constricting. Where if they really want to make a move, they'll make that move.
Uh, what are we talking about with compensation with Garrett? And then we'll move on to more real things. What are we looking at? Like, and there's going to be competition for it, and Andrew Berry, the GM of the Browns, is going to have to play it and be like, okay, I know you want to go to Philly, Myles, or I know you want to go to Washington, but the Jags are offering us this, or this bad team's offering this, and you're saying you won't go there. So it's very much going to be how good of a negotiator Andrew Berry is. And if you're talking about 2 1s plus, I don't think Howie's overpaying, going to outbid another team in a trade market to then pay a guy $40 million a year.
Yeah, I also think part of it too is like, what does Myles Garrett want? Because he has some leverage here too, in terms of I think what his future holds and where he might want to go and where he doesn't want to go. Clearly, I think it's not just like, hey, I want to go to any team. He said, and all the reporting is he wants to go to a contender. So that's going to shrink the market, you would think. So, and you look at the historical precedent here. I know Khalil Mack went for 2 1s, I guess it was, back in the day, although
Yes.
there was also some picks returned in that trade, so it wasn't like the true value of 2 full ones. But historical precedent, by large, says the Eagles wouldn't have to give up 2 first tier. Now, the caveat is obviously they're picking 32 this year, so that's like 1 pick away from a second-round pick. So that's kind of a little bit of a fake first, if you will. I really don't think Howie is like super keen on trading a future first, in the sense of like it's an unknown, and that could be, God forbid they have, Jalen Hurts gets injured or something crazy, something goes sideways, and they're giving up a high pick. But it's Myles Garrett, and Myles Garrett is like, that's not a player like some of these players who get moved or whatever, or some of these top of the free agent guys. Like those caliber players are around every year. Myles Garrett, a player of his caliber, like that does not happen very often. That is a special opportunity, and that's why I think Howie. I don't know. I think it's more likely than not that the Eagles do not get him, just because there's so many roadblocks to getting to that point. But I think Howie's legitimately in on this because this is a special opportunity that just doesn't come around very often.
We agree on that. Of course, he should be. This guy's unbelievable, and if you can get him, it's like AJ Brown. I remember at the time that AJ Brown was a first round draft pick. You never like giving away your first round draft pick. How does that trade look right now? The Eagles got AJ Brown for a first round draft pick. Miami got Tyreek Hill for a second plus, I think. Like, even though that they haven't won a Super Bowl or anything, he's dynamic. He's one of the best playmakers in all of football. So those draft picks, Myles Garrett would be the same thing. He would. All right, so free agency. Let's do Slay. Slay's going to get, everybody's reporting Slay's going to get released June 1st. Derek Gunn said, he tweeted out that don't completely rule Slay out. His asking price is a little steep right now, but the Eagles are hoping he plays his final NFL season in Eagles green. What do you think ends up happening here? Like, Slay was traded 2 years ago. I mean, we did a show, like, thank God, fans were like, oh, Slay, get him out of here. We thought he was gone. He ended up coming back. How do you think this plays out?
Yeah, I mean, if that's true, and I'm seeing Jeff McLean mentioning here too that like the Eagles, they're kind of asking him. It would have to be a bigger pay cut this time. It's a different situation from the last time. And look, I mean, it's not about Darius Slay not being a good player. It's about, I don't think it's a great bet. I mean, he's 34. Like cornerbacks, we've seen it with James Bradbury. I'm not saying that's a 1-for-1 situation. Obviously, Darius Slay has been able to make it further into his career than Bradbury was, but like cornerbacks can fall off hard and fast. And I don't think you want to make that bet. It'd be a different story if the Eagles didn't have other cornerbacks behind him, but they have like the most cornerbacks behind him that you could reasonably have in terms of Quinton Mitchell. Obviously, you trust him. Cooper DeJean, really interested to see where he plays. I would keep him in the slot, but there's probably going to be a conversation. We'll see if they move him outside at least a little bit, near 2. Isaiah Rodgers, like I would like to retain him. I think you probably ideally want to retain one of either him or Slay. And then there's Keely Ringo too, who also factors into this. And like again, you can't pay everyone. You have to go less expensive somewhere. And I feel like this is the opportunity to get younger at a position where it's a young man's game more than other positions, cornerback. And you got to go less expensive somewhere. So I would rather just roll with the young guys. I know Slay is good. I think he might be able to still help a team in 2025, but I don't want to make that bet.
Well, this is the Eagles saying like, hey, if you come down a little bit, we might be able to find common ground here, but where we're at right now, it's not going to happen. And they'll go with Rodgers or Ringo, and it may be a mistake, it may not be a mistake, but I agree with you. Like that's a real, like if Slay wants to be back and he's willing to take what the Eagles are offering, I think he'll be back. All right, of the big four free agents, who do you have coming back and who do you have leaving? Kind of like who do you like rank them 1, 2, 3, 4 of who you expect back?
Yeah, I just think with Zach Bond, like you don't let all pro players walk out the door. You don't let a guy who is getting defensive player of the year votes, I think he finished 5th in that voting, walk out the door. Like you find a way to make that work. And I don't know exactly what his money is going to come in at. I think it might be like top 4 in terms of annual linebacker value. Um, I just think you have to keep that guy with how unique he is, what he did for this defense. Um, I, I just think, and also because you don't have any other linebackers. If you don't
Right.
keep him, because Nakobe Dean's probably out for the year, so I think you just have to make that work. The rest of the guys, I think Mekhi Becton's kind of like let's see how the market goes. You know, like Zach Bond, I think is like, hey, let's try to get him signed if you're the Eagles before free agency. Becton is like, we're going to let you hit free agency. We'll monitor your situation. We'll see what your price tag is. And then if it makes sense somehow and the market is less than expected, well, then maybe there's a deal here we can make. And then I think with Josh Sweat and Milton Williams, I mean, I think they're both gone. And I think the Sweat thing specifically, that's been a divorce a year in the making. Like when he came back on a pay cut, I think that's kind of the end of that relationship at that point, obviously just playing out that final year. Milton Williams, like, I mean, I just think he's going to get insane money. I think he's going to get like $25 million, like kind of a year of money. And great for him. He deserves that. But if you're the Eagles, like, why would you be paying a player that when you have Jalen Carter on your defensive line, by the way, you're going to have to pay him in a couple of years. He might be the highest paid player in the NFL, defensive player, at least in the NFL, when you sign him to his extension as soon as maybe next year. So, yeah, Milton Williams, great player. Nothing against him, but good luck elsewhere.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. When he gets released in 3 years, he can come back and we'll re-sign him a lot like Javon Hargrave. Because if these guys leave, they're good. Like Howie's not. It's not going to be in the first wave of free agency. And I think Howie alluded to this when he spoke at the combine. You might wait the market out, and then you get like, all right, who's left? Who didn't get what they wanted? Because they're going to need They're going to need pass rushers. If it's not Myles Garrett, they're going to need an end or two. They're going to need a defensive tackle. Because you don't want this to become. You need it as a strength. You have an injury or two, then you're really screwing yourself. All right, so what was the last thing? Oh, and by the way, we're in lockstep with. I think most people are in lockstep with free agency. The one thing I would say with Becton, you were mentioning earlier about saving money, and it's so different with this team because they run the ball and they do that tush push to where Becton being 380 pounds as a run blocker could be really important, and they value him more. But I feel like that's a place that you could save some money by just sliding in the next Becton or using Steen or something at guard. But I agree with you. I think it's going to determine on the market. All right, last thing. I've heard ESP talking about this a couple times over the last few weeks. Dallas Goedert doesn't have guaranteed money left. It almost feels like a Zach Ertz type situation, except they don't have his replacement on the roster, to where with Ertz, they had Goddard on the roster, and it was fairly obvious what they were going to do. Is this something we should be monitoring as far as Goddard not coming back? Or, man, if he stayed healthy, I think it would be a much different story. I still think you need him, but you definitely need him for this year. But, like, he's a difference maker when he plays. But where is this situation going as we head into free agency?
Yeah, I think maybe it's something like it's like a Josh Sweat situation from last year in terms of like, there's a little bit of shopping, seeing the value or whatever, and it kind of results in either him taking a pay cut or something with that contract. I mean, Goddard was really good in the postseason. Like I know it was a frustrating year on the whole, struggles to stay healthy. I get that, but he was really good. And the Eagles don't have anything behind him in terms of like guys are going to trust. And so that's the thing. If you do something with him, you have to have a plan. Like you can't just like move on from him and be like, all right, now what? Like we'll figure it out as we go. Like, no, you would have to have some kind of, so I think it really just makes the most sense with him to ride it out for one more year, obviously be able to hopefully maybe draft his replacement or potential replacement this year. Because, Grant Calcaterra, I think had a nice season, but can't really run block, and that's a huge issue, specifically in this offense.
Oh yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't need Hunter Henry or this year's version of Hunter Henry in free agency. I know what Dallas Goedert is. No, and BLG, you're right. Dallas Goedert's a monster, man. That the 20 yards that he essentially just pushed the Packers defensive back away so he could run into the end zone. I mean, he's a monster if he can stay healthy, which is a big if with Dallas Goedert. All right, BLG, always great, man. Get over to Bleeding Green Nation. I was reading your stuff this morning. I knew that you were not in on Slay coming back, so I knew where you're going with that. But for more of Brandon's insights and the whole team over there, Bleeding Green Nation, check him out. Thanks, BLG.
Absolutely.
All right, there he is, Brandon Lee Gowton. All right, coming back, we'll do our Philly segment. But we have a couple more leftovers with the Eagles and some NFL stuff. But we have our Phillies segment. As our own PHLY Phillies insider, Tyler Zulli, will check in with what's going on with the Fightins. Also, talk about, not reading the room. Wait till you see something that happened with the Mavericks yesterday. Wait till you hear/see this. Pretty unbelievable. That's coming up. Philly. John Marks, PHLY. Why? Well, so listen, Glad Hair Restoration. I had the hat on today, all right? Not because I don't like my hair, not because I'm balding, not because I'm thinning and I'm wearing a hat more often, because you know what? It does look better backwards. I'll go on the record. The hat looks better backwards when I look into the camera right here. But Glad Hair Restoration, if you're balding, if you're like, man, my hair's really starting to fall out, if you're shedding like the crown of your head right here, if you have the receding hairline, Glatt Hair Restoration has something for you. My before and after pictures are on the website, glatthairmm.com. Tyler has before and after pictures when you do these, when you talk about Glatt Hair Restoration, he pops up on the screen and it's like, yeah, it's like those are real results. Oh, there you go. So these are years apart. That's from my engagement party, which was, a dozen years ago. And that's from my wife's birthday a year and a month ago. So you can see the difference. Not a terrible hairline on the left, right? Not like brutal, but you can see where the hairline's going. That was 12 years ago. What would it look like right now? I'll tell you what it looked like right now. My head would be shaved. I'd be putting Mr. Clean on my head. All right. glatthairmm.com. If you were like me and you're like, hey, my hair, I don't like it. Well, it's not just about hair restoration. It's about innovation as well, right? There's a lot of great things that are going on right now with hair, and Glatt Hair, that's all they do. That's all they do. Over 30 years of experience. 610-980-4000. 610-980-4000. glatthairmm.com. glatthairmm.com. Hoo-ah. glatthairmm.com. All right. Talk about Ace. Ace is the place. If you're kind of pathetic like me and you constantly I can do labor, right? I'm not a wimp. I mow my lawn, right? I could pay a landscaper. No. I got the zero cut. I'm out there. I'm weed whacking. I'm making it look good. It looks sharp, right? Like a good barber when he lines you up. That's me, man. You'd be impressed, right? I don't necessarily like gardening, but like I can move stuff. I have no skill, right? And that's why I need Ace and Ace Hardware Home Services, because if something needs to be fixed, I have no shot. If it really anything outside of I can hang a picture. That's about it. But Ace Hardware Home Services, we're talking about local plumbers and techs that handle everything from repairs and seasonal maintenance to installation and upgrades. And we're talking about a wide range of residential maintenance, installation, home repair services that includes plumbing, heating, cooling, and electrical. Free estimates on equipment installation and replacement with trusted advisors and options that are best suited for your home and budget. Emergency services available for when you need them the most. And your trust and satisfaction is guaranteed. Ace Hardware Home Services, they make it right no matter what. Local teams right there in your community, and they're dedicated to keeping you comfortable in your home. AceHardwareHomeservices.com to get started on your next project. AceHardwareHomeservices.com. All right. There we go. All right, so before we get to the Philly stuff, so if you're following the post Luka Doncic trade to the Los Angeles Lakers, well, the Lakers are now a legit championship contender, and the Mavs suck. They got smoked by the Sacramento Kings last night. It was 122-98. And things have not been good for the Mavs since the trade. They're only 2 games over 500. And they were hoping the addition by subtraction. And I heard a lot of, Kyrie, and he's going to take over, and Anthony Davis is going to be a better fit, and blah, 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 blah. Anthony Davis plays 1 game, and he's been out with an injury since. And the Mavericks have totally plummeted. They've lost 2 straight games here. They get smoked last night by the Kings. So here's what it looked like as, they're down 20-some in the fourth quarter. And this is, I think, the end of the third quarter, where fans are, they're leaving in droves. They're leaving in droves. And there it is. So everybody's leaving. You know what happens at a game when it's like, all right, end of the third quarter, and now they're down by 20-some points. I would go home too, okay? But here's what the Mavericks also announced yesterday. Their season ticket prices. Tyler, you would probably think that they lowered them because the fans were so unhappy. I mean, the fans are so pissed at their GM that they gave up a future Hall of Famer and a generational talent for...
We're to a point where... I don't know if it was the NBA Centel account that ended up getting suspended, but there was a tweet that was like, Mavericks fans are banned from wearing Luka jerseys in the stadium, which was a fake report.
And it wasn't true, yes.
But like, it took me 3 or 4 like searches through Twitter to verify, is this an actual thing?
A lot of people believed it, yeah.
Because it felt like, as ridiculous as everything that has happened over the last couple of weeks with the Mavericks and moving Luka and how their GM is being viewed, I'm like, this is actually plausible. Is it real? Probably not, but now I got to go confirm it because I really don't know if this is true or not. Now, obviously, it ended up being, a spoof, but like the fact that I had to go and try to verify this kind of gives you an idea of how Mavericks fans feel about their team right now.
I thought the same way, which is they are backpedaling and they are in crisis mode right now. So what do? They raise season ticket prices.
That's just insane.
They announced it yesterday. On average, prices will jump by more than 8%. And certain seats will jump by 10%. Now, they pointed out, hey, there's still a lot of seats that are $20 or blah, 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 blah. It just looks terrible. If you're gonna raise season ticket prices for next year, I mean, okay, I get it.
Listen,
you're a business, I get it. And they cited like costs and everything else in it. Like, I get it. It's just, you know how it's going to be received right now.
Listen, sports are cyclical. I've said that for a long time. Like, there's good years, there's bad years. And in order to be a season ticket holder for the good years, more times than not, you have to retain the tickets in the bad years. And that's just a part of sports and sports culture, right? But you have to be, as an ownership group, self-aware. Like, the one thing the Sixers did when they were going through the process was keep the tickets relatively cheap because they knew the product on the floor was not a good one. And that was the way to get people in when they said, when we turn the corner, when Embiid gets healthy and we draft Simmons and we make all of these moves, we're going to raise ticket prices.
And they did.
Because we're good, and you're going to stick around because your tickets for a bulk of the last couple of years have been relatively cheap. That's just the way that sports operate. The Phillies have raised their ticket prices over the last 3-4 years because their payroll is $190 million to $290 million in a 4-year window. That's the way they make their money. But you live with that because on the inverse, when our team gets bad again, tickets will at least stay stagnant. They're not going to raise tickets when we're a bad team. When you're in this situation and you're in like crisis mode, as you brought up, you have to be self-aware enough to say, all right, tickets are going to remain exactly what they were a season ago. And that's, at least you give your fans all right, they didn't lower them, but they didn't raise them.
But you know what's going to happen? Less people are going to leave. So that money that you think you're making by raising tickets, you're going to end up losing, and it's probably you're going to end up breaking even anyway. Right? So that you're just giving yourself terrible publicity. Like, hey, listen, if I was the owner of the Mavericks or I was running the Mavericks, I might have hated Luka too, right? Like he's smoking the hookah, he's drinking beer, he's a pain in the ass, he doesn't listen to you. You know what you do? Wait till the friggin' offseason and get more than Anthony Davis. Actually go out there and say, hey, listen, let's negotiate. Let me work out a better trade. Hey, Washington, you want to give up this? Oh, Luka, you won't re-sign in Washington and you're telling us that? Okay, then the Lakers are going to have to give us more, or this team's going to have to give us more. It's the same thing with Myles Garrett. It's a negotiation. It feels like Rob Pelinka, because he has a relationship, more or less stole him. The Lakers weren't winning a championship this year. They could win a championship now with Luka.
Yeah.
You've seen them play. When they're good, they look like a championship.
When that phone call, I imagine, probably went, "Hey, buddy, what you doing? Can I have Luka, please?" And like that's what I imagine the phone call sounded like, because there's the other way that this went down doesn't seem to exist. There seemed to have been no negotiation. There seemed to have been no other teams involved in the conversation, and it just was like, wait, whoa, what? Hold on now.
Nico Harrison has a personal relationship with Rob Pelinka from back in his days being at Nike. And these guys know each other. So you know what Pelinka was probably doing, the Lakers GM? Probably being like, yeah, Luka, he's a real pain in the ass. Oh, I agree. I feel bad for you guys. Hey, you know what? Like, it might make sense. Oh, listen, you good, Anthony? He's a great, he's not going to give you a problem. We'll give you this guy. And like, look, you could compete with Kyrie. He talked him into it. Got totally fleeced. Trade a friggin' generational player like Luka, who's young as hell. They were just in the finals last year. This isn't 4 years of Luka being a fat drunk that's smoking the hookah at halftime. I mean, Jesus Christ. All right. So the Phillies. Oh, the Phillies. So what were you getting down and deep with yesterday on the PHLY Phillies show, Tyler?
Yeah, so yesterday we talked a lot about Christopher Sanchez because Sunday his velocity was up. I mean, listen, spring training game, 2 innings compared to him pitching 6 or 7, but the velocity was significantly up. So last year we talked about his average sinker velocity was at about 95 miles an hour. Sunday he was sitting 97, 98 pretty routinely. He averaged 96.9. for the 29 sinkers, I believe that it was, that he threw. If Christopher Sanchez's velocity is up and his changeup velocity can stay where it's at, that split in velo, especially with how good his arm angles become. And like I talked about yesterday about he's so tall that his extension, just by sheer nature of his height, he's kind of barreling down the mound
as a lefty, and that makes that changeup so incredibly good.
So difficult to pick up. And if he's throwing 97 on the sinker and 86 on the changeup with the good arm action and good extension, John, I don't want to get like super excited, but
do it. Put it out there.
There's a chance that Christopher Sanchez is like emerges as a legit 2 on this team this season and could be in like borderline Cy Young contention.
Well, he was just an all-star last year, right?
I'm so excited for what Sanchez could bring this year. So that was a bulk of our conversation yesterday. But like, and again, I know 2 innings versus 6 or 7 and 30, 31, 32 starts. Can he maintain it? Much more difficult ask. But if he's at 96, 97, 98, he's going to become really, really difficult to hit.
Yeah, but you know what? If his velocity was down by 2 miles an hour, people would be saying, oh, well, it's early in spring training, but we'd be like, that's not good.
Concerned about
the
it.
The velocity's not down, it's up.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Well, he's in better shape. And like you had mentioned, he knows how to pitch too. Any left-handed pitcher, this was Cole Hamels, that is setting guys up to strike him out with his changeup. His changeup is a swing and miss pitch. Obviously, he's got good command. He's got good movement on that fastball. But man, when he's setting guys up to drop the changeup, and even when you know that it's coming, like you had mentioned, it's hard to pick up. It's hard for those right-handers to pick it up, man.
I was kind of surprised. Like I don't view Christopher Sanchez as this crazy strikeout pitcher, but I was kind of surprised last year. He was only at 20.9% K rate last season. I think that number is going to go up this year. His ground ball rates are crazy, right? He's in like the 98th percentile in ground ball rates. He's so good at keeping the ball down. But one of the things I was talking about was if he can go 97, 98 up in the zone just occasionally, he's going to change eye level. He's going to change swing patterns. Like, to me, him being able to throw that hard up in the zone, especially to righties, and kind of run it up on their hands a little bit and have confidence in throwing that fastball up in the zone every once in a while is going to make that changeup so much better. I think the ground ball rates stay high, but I think his strikeout rates are going to come up this year.
Yeah, he's a young pitcher that's going to be better. He's like Ranger Suarez. When Ranger Suarez first came up, I wasn't sure if he was a major leaguer. Now he's gonna when he's a free agent, he's gonna make some real money. All right, Jesus Luzardo pitched over the weekend as well. So if you're making the case, and I know we talk a lot about the lineup and Trey Turner is batting leadoff, and where's he going to be, and can he bounce back or whatever. This team's bread and butter is going to be their starting pitching. Jesus Luzardo, he pitched over the weekend, and man, was he sharp as far as his velocity and just like the command and the movement. And honestly, like I've seen Luzardo pitch it's different when he's yours and now you're paying attention to what kind of stuff he has. I mean, this guy's a potential ace if he's on. I mean, he really is. You mentioned Sanchez could develop as your number 2, and you already have Zach Wheeler. Luzardo could end up being, he was up to 98 on the radar gun, and he looks sharp. So again, I mean, geez. And now you have Andrew Painter that could be your 5th starter at some point during the season. So you have Wheeler, Sanchez. We know Nola's Mr. Reliable. Jesus Luzardo looked excellent over the weekend.
Yeah, and you bring up Nola, and he almost is. I know he's making a ton of money, and he's making like top of the line rotation type of money, but he almost becomes a forgotten piece if these guys kind of pitch to their potential. You brought up Mr. Consistency. Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler are 1 and 2 in innings pitched amongst starters since Zach Wheeler was acquired in 2020. The first and second, they have been absolute bullpen savers over the course of their time together. And not only that, but Zach Wheeler's been an ace, and Aaron Nola has been a model of consistency. That guy just doesn't miss starts. You know, you have your concerns about the home runs he gives up and things like that. I understand those qualms, but this is going to be a team that is predicated on beating you through the first 6 or 7 innings and just taking the breath out of a game, if you will. Like, just having the ability to shut you down on any given night because your 5 is a 2 or a 3 on other teams. Your 3 could be a 2 on another. You know what I mean? Like, they are so set up to be a successful pitching staff. Should Luzardo bounce back from injury? Should Ranger be able to bounce back from injury? You brought up Luzardo's stuff. Like, the slider has this weird gyro movement, but it becomes unhittable. 97, like you mentioned, good heavy changeup. I'm excited for him. They've got 3 lefties in their rotation this year that could all be problematic for teams, you know, heading into the 2025 season.
Man, and you look at, like, you watch him, Luzardo, and you're like, wow. Like, all right, like I knew he was good, but you're like, wow, like he has like real stuff. That was a great trade by Dombrowski. Dombrowski wanted another starter that was controllable for the next few years, and he was sniffing around with Seattle for Bohm, and they didn't want to do that. So he makes the trade, gives up the prospect with the Marlins. Excellent trade.
With that trade too, like Kaba to me is an intriguing prospect because I think Kaba is a Gold Glove caliber defender. I think he's just like silky smooth as a defensive shortstop. Can he hit is the question, right? Doesn't strike out a lot, doesn't whiff a lot, but does he become the type of hitter with enough pop to be an everyday major league hitter? Still remains to be seen. He's super young. I was not a huge Amarian Boyd fan, just like from what I've seen, like he didn't do a whole lot for me. So you're giving up Kaba for the potential return of a 2 or a 3 in your rotation when Luzardo's fully healthy.
Well,
it's an excellent move in my opinion.
Yeah, well worth it because he could end up being a good player, but still it's worth it. Like Dave Dombrowski's trying to win a World Series in the next 2 years. Sure. He'd be stupid not to do it.
And with Rangers' contract expiring, the likelihood that Andrew Painter is going to be up at some capacity this year and probably full tilt in 26. Luzardo's under contract through
you have your rotation next year.
You have your rotation set for next year too, even if Ranger doesn't return.
Shout out to everybody watching on the TV side of things, Xfinity, Samsung Plus, Roku. Switch over to allphly.com to watch the rest of the program. And also allphly.com. I can't say enough about Rich Hoffman and the work he does on the daily email that sends out. It's not just an email. Don't think of it as like, oh, it's a newsletter. PHLY Daily. Everything you need to know. So it starts off with Big Play Slay. Zach's coverage on that. Just it's the Philadelphia Morning Sports page that you used to get in the Daily News. You get it right here and it's free. It's free. Allphly.com. You know, I noticed this, Tyler, because I've now gotten in. I've lost or damaged my my Yetis that I put the coffee in. So like this morning, I tried to just have a cup of coffee at home before I left. And then I'm like, oh, well, I won't need any more coffee. I'll be fine. And then I get here and I'm like, all right, I'm going to Starbucks because I need another coffee.
Yeah,
so
I pulled into the parking lot. I'm watching you drive away. I'm like, is he just not, doesn't feel like being here today? We're going to try again tomorrow? Yeah,
well, I was here early. So I typed up what I wanted to do. And I'm like, all right, I got to go get coffee. So I end up going to buy coffee anyway. But so I go to, and yesterday we talked about Wawa, but so I'm fixing my coffee at the island at Wawa and I see, And it literally couldn't have been more buried back in like where you wouldn't be able to find it was the newspaper section that always was prominently. And I think it's back there because they have like salt or windshield wiper fluid or whatever, maybe where they normally keep it. I don't know if they keep it up front anymore. It literally, it's like next to the mop. It used to be prime location. People walk in, the first thing they do is grab a Daily News or an Inquirer or whatever, and then you go get your coffee or whatever. Nope. This is back by the mop and the wet floor sign. All the way back buried in the corner. It's like,
Cleaning
is that where
supplies.
the newspapers are? That's where all the newspapers were. It's
Yeah.
crazy to think where we've gone.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I remember I've told you this story before. Like the first real exposure that I had to newspapers was going into the barbershop on the weekends and not reading to comprehend, but reading just to like look at box scores, but reading the sports section. You know, my dad and I would go in, and my dad would get his haircut, and I would read the paper, and then I would, basically flip roles. But I remember having there was 4 or 5 different available newspapers, right? Like you would have your options. And I would be like, all right, I'm checking out the box scores, and I want to see what did the Dodgers do, or what did the Yankees do, or whatever. And that's how I got my news like on the weekends. And I remember being a kid and seeing all of the papers very prominently featured, even at the barbershop. And now it's like I can't tell you the last time I picked up a paper.
When I go to my parents' house and there's an Inquirer there, I used to then like when I stopped by in the Daily News, and I would still get the Sunday Inquirer. And it's like, it's not even, I've already read a lot of it. Cause I love not just the sports section. I'm a newspaper reader. So, but I don't anymore. But yeah, like I used to love, I'd start with the sports section. I'm in the local section. I'm in whatever. All right. Everybody have a great day. Anthony is live right now. Make sure you're following and subscribing and liking and commenting on YouTube. And follow me on social media at John Jon Marks Marks Media at John Marks Media. We are back tomorrow live at 8:00. Switch over to Ant right now. He's live. See you.
We all silly like the mayor.